To the west of the recovering Roman Empire, the numerous barbarian kingdoms of the Germans managed, under the leadership of Theodoric the Great, to establish diplomacy and alliances among themselves. Virtually all the major players were bound together by dynastic marriages and vows not to attack their neighbor. To the south, in Africa, the Vandals were ruled by the handsome and cautious Tramazund, who married Theodoric's widowed sister, Amalafrida. Besides Amalafrida herself, several thousand Gothic warriors were sent south to support the rapidly weakening kingdom of the Vandals, who for many decades never turned from robbers and pirates into a layer of economic and enlightened rulers. The kingdom of the Visigoths, formerly ruled by Theodoric's grandson, was directly controlled through officials from Ravenna. Frankish kings' brothers Theodoric deterred by the threat of a full-scale war in case they attacked any of their neighbors. There were also family ties. Theodoric's wife, Amalafrida, was the sister of Chlodwig, and thus an aunt of the Merovingians. Further attempts by the Franks to advance beyond the east came across the fact that the Alemanni, defeated a second time by the Franks, submitted to the Ostgoths, and their country beyond the Alps became part of the larger Ostgothic kingdom. The northern neighbors of the Alemanni, the Thuringians, formalized their alliance with the Ostgoths in the same unoriginal way. Their king, Hermenefrid, married Theodoric's niece, Amalberta. Such an alliance included the Turanoves in Theodoric's huge defensive alliance and spared Europe from major wars for many years. Violation of such an alliance was severely punished. For example, after the murder of his nephew Sigeric in Burgundy, Theodoric started a war and his army captured several towns in Provence. The situation was aggravated by the fact that the Burgundian king Sigismund, deprived of allies, was immediately attacked by a combined force of Frankish predator kings. They were not confused by the fact that this time they attacked their co-religionist. Only the death of one of his brothers and the subsequent bloody division of his kingdom between relatives stopped the Franks from the complete destruction of Burgundy. And vice versa, the alliance with Theodoric allowed a lot. In Thuringia, Hermenefrid in turn massacred his brothers, attracting to his side one of the Frankish kings, his neighbor Theodoric I, as if even promising him in case of success half of all the booty. Having won, he, in Theodoric's opinion, deceived his ally. At least the Frank declared that the land was also booty, and it would be nice to get half of the kingdom. But because of the alliance of the Thuringians and Ostgoths, the Frank preferred to return to his capital and hold a grudge, waiting for the right moment. Of course, we should not forget the great Roman Empire. In the East did not forget about the recently lost lands and continued to keep a close eye on the affairs that took place in Italy, Gaul, Africa, and Spain. Still, there remained a lot of people speaking Latin, professing the same religion as in Constantinople, and waiting for when finally the crisis of the 5th century is over and Rome will again gather all the lands into one big civilization. Theodoric, at first very loyal to the empire as he consolidated his power, became increasingly jealous of ties with Byzantium. There was a distinct chill in the attitude of Theodoric and the Emperor Justin during his last years. Hilderic was the son of Guneric and Eudocia, daughter of the Roman Emperor Valentinian, that is, half of imperial blood, brought up by his mother in the best traditions, accordingly stopped the persecution of Christians and took a pro-Byzantine position. Hilderic was friends with the nephew of Emperor Justinian, the future Emperor Justinian, whom his uncle brought closer to himself, and as he grew older, allowed Justinian to make many state decisions on behalf of the emperor. The Gothic party, led by the widow of the former king, rebelled, but was defeated. Amalafrida was executed. Relations between the Vandals and the Ostgoths were completely destroyed, and Theodoric began to prepare a retaliatory strike, building a fleet that never made it to war because of the death of the great Italian king. From Amalafrida in Italy remained her son, named Theodahad, a man greedy and cowardly, owning lands in Tuscany and all forces oppressing neighbors at the expense of which he expanded his possessions. On the throne sat Theodoric's young grandson, Atalaric, for whom the queen mother Amalasuntha actually ruled. Theodoric, who ruled Italy, will remain in history as one of the noblest foreigners who ever ruled the country. To this day, his memory is preserved in the cities that were renewed and beautified by the Italians under Theodoric. There are several castles of Theodoric in the country, and in Ravenna there is his huge round tombstone with a monolith dome of extraordinary magnitude. Alas, Amalafrida, beautiful, unusually well educated, and even more eager for the prosperity of Rome, its sciences and culture, did not have, as we would now say, geopolitical sense. The dominion of the Goths, created by Theodoric, held on the personal power of the king, and Amalafrida, immersed in the management of the state, missed foreign policy, for starters, cancelled the military expedition to Africa. Next, the project of uniting Spain and Italy into a single state was scrapped. The treasury of the Visigoths returned to Narbonne. In exchange for independence, the Visigoths gave the Ostgoths Provence, Arles, Marseille, and its surroundings. Many Ostgothic officials were pulled back to Italy. Spain stopped paying taxes to Ravenna and stopped supplying bread, but along with independence came back danger from the Franks looming in the north. So the young king preferred to secure himself by marrying Clotilde the Younger, daughter of Chlodwig and sister of the predator kings. Clotilde was baptized according to the Roman rite, and her relations with the king's court did not immediately go well. Nevertheless, the neighbors did not yet dare to break the peace reigning in Europe, waiting for some clear sign showing that the Ostgoths had lost their fighting spirit. Amalafrida began her reign with an act of reconciliation. She restored to the children of Boëthius and Symmachus the rights to their father's inheritance. During the reign of the queen, not a single Roman was executed. The sciences and arts were encouraged, and senators were showered with honors, though their number grew greatly, as senators were produced by many noble Goths. The wretched descendants of Scipio could not object to this, and remained content with their outward splendor and preserved position. Gothic nobles under Theodoric with great difficulty agreed to recognize Amalafrida as queen, because it was contrary to the customs of their tribe, but did not grumble and did not break the external unity, until one day, at an assembly before them, appeared their weeping king, which one of the many teachers spanked with a birch. Amalafrida endeavored with all her might to educate Attalari to be an enlightened and cultured man, and surrounded him with a multitude of teachers. The patience of the Goths broke, and at the meeting the noble warriors reminded the queen that Theodoric, who all his life could not write and could hardly speak Latin, nevertheless created a great state, and the shameful embarrassment of their new king will lead to the fact that he will grow up to be a lisp. The arguments were valid. The queen had already lost touch with Gothic culture, although it was the fighting spirit of the Germans that led them to greatness. Since then, Attalaric, with the queen's consent, was surrounded by Gothic youths and plunged into a world of youthful fun, consisting of parties, drinking, and going after women. The Goths themselves, after they had succeeded in putting pressure on the queen, were convinced that they could continue to do so, and a party emerged and grew, demanding that the Germans stop trying to imitate the Romans in dress, forbid the Goths to learn to read and speak anything in Latin, also in turn to prevent the Romans from approaching the Germans, and even better, to depose the queen and put a worthy warlike man on the throne. Amalafrida, seeing such a case, sent the three chief troublemakers to different parts of the country, so that they, commanding the frontier garrisons, would cease to embarrass the public. This did not appease the hotheads, for even from the frontiers there was correspondence and conspiracy began to brew. The queen had to send assassins to all three. While the assassins were on the road, Amalafrida, fearing failure and open rebellion, packed a ship with her jewels and crossed the Adriatic to the Byzantine coast, where Emperor Justin allocated her a lavish mansion and allowed her to visit at her pleasure. The assassinations succeeded, and the queen returned to the capital, showing everyone that she was ready to fight for her throne. But all this internal turmoil did not escape the eyes of the neighbors, so the Franks, no longer fearing a military response from the Ostgoths, began a military expansion on the neighbors. The Westgoths were not helped by the dynastic marriage with the Franks. Their king Hildebert attacked the Westgoths. Amalaric was defeated at Narbonne and fled to the south, to Barcelona, where he was killed on the way by some Frank. Together with it, the sword of Baltz has cut off, and since then all noble Goths considered themselves worthy new applicants for a throne of Spain. His sister, whose honor was defended by the Franks, died on the way home, and Hildebert was satisfied with a few regions in southern Gaul, and returned at the call of his brothers to the war with the Burgundians. Theodoric I, meanwhile, struck at Thuringia. The pretext was an old grudge for an unfulfilled promise to Hermeneford. Calling to the aid of his brother Clothar, the armies of the two kings defeated the Thuringians, and they fortified themselves in the fortress of Skeeting. Leaving part of the army to besiege the fortress, the combined forces of the three Frankish kings struck Burgundy. The Ostgoths, preoccupied with internal problems, did not react to these wars, so that Godemar II was besieged in Autun. The Burgundians had no forces to resist against the united Franks. Autun fell in the summer of 532nd year. Godemar II soon died, and the Franks, broken into small detachments, began to sweep through the mountain villages of Burgundy, establishing their power. Then Theodoric returned to finish off the Thuringians. His brother Clothar refused to help him this time because during the first campaign there was an unpleasant incident. Theodoric once called Clothar to his tent for a meeting. Clothar, about to enter, suddenly noticed behind the curtain feet standing there people and was interested in who it is standing inside the tent. The canopy was pulled back, and Clothar saw that several confused and armed warriors of Theodoric were hiding there. The meeting had been disrupted. Theodoric began to reassure his brother that he had misunderstood him, and even presented him with a large silver dish. Clothar left for his home anyway. On the way, Theodoric's son and heir, Theodebert, caught up with him. He asked for the dish back, since Clothar had not forgiven his brother. The dish was returned, and a certain chill in relations has lurked between the brothers ever since. So in just 2 years, the Franks brought down the king of the Visigoths, destroyed Burgundy, and inflicted a heavy defeat on Thuringia. Disregarding the turmoil and rebellions in the rear, Theodoric, Chlodwig, and Hildebert carried their power, encouraged from Constantinople and Rome, turning the state of the Franks into the most powerful state of the West. Theodoric lacked the strength to finish off the Thuringians. How he will continue the campaign we will learn in the sequel.